Most of us have woken up in the middle of the night after a bad dream. Your eyes open, you know you're awake, but your body refuses to move. For a few long seconds, it feels as though something is pressing down on your chest, stealing each breath before it reaches your lungs. Long before the term sleep paralysis, it was called something else. In the hills outside Chiang Mai in Thailand, there was once a small village where nearly every home stood on wooden stilts above the damp ground. During the rainy season, the roads disappeared beneath thick mud, and after sunset, the only light came from kerosene lamps glowing slowly through bamboo windows. Life there was quiet. The villagers knew one another by name. They shared harvests, celebrated temple festivals together, and believed that every forest, river, and mountain deserved respect. They also believed that certain stories were best told before dark. Among them was the story of Fiam. Children were warned never to laugh at it. Adults simply avoided mentioning it. No one wanted to invite unnecessary attention. A young school teacher named Naran arrived in the village one summer after accepting his first teaching position. He had studied in Bangkok and politely dismissed many of the old beliefs as traditions from another generation. When his landlord apologized for the age of the house, Niran smiled and said he had slept in worse places during university. The first week passed without incident. He enjoyed the peaceful mornings, the mountain air, the slow pace of village life. Then, one night, he woke suddenly. His room was silent. The lamp beside his bed had gone out hours earlier. Moonlight spilled through the wooden shutters, casting pale lines across the floor. He tried to sit up. Nothing happened. His arms would not move. Neither would his legs. His breathing became shallow, as though someone had quietly placed a heavy sack of rice across his chest. He could hear every sound inside the house, the old beams creaking, rainwater dripping from the roof, a gecko clicking somewhere above him. Everything felt painfully real. Then he heard footsteps inside, crossing the wooden floor toward his bed. He wanted to turn his head, but he couldn't. The footsteps stopped right beside him. Something stood there. He couldn't see it. He only knew it was close enough that the air beside his face felt colder. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the weight disappeared. His body lurched forward. He gasped for air and lit the lamp with trembling hands. The room was empty. The following morning, Niran laughed about it while drinking coffee with another teacher. Sleep paralysis, he said. Stress from moving. The older villagers overheard him but said nothing. Only the village grandmother asked him where he had slept. When he pointed toward the old teak house at the edge of the village, her smile faded. She told him not to sleep flat on his back. He thanked her politely. He had no intention of changing his sleep pattern. The second attack came 4 nights later. This time, he woke before midnight. Again, he couldn't move. The pressure settled across his chest. Only now, there was another sound, the low sound of breathing. but it wasn't his own. As though someone else were lying beside him in the darkness. He kept telling himself it wasn't real, that the mind can create convincing illusions between sleep and waking. Then he felt the mattress sink slightly, just enough to suggest another weight had settled onto the bed. When he finally broke free, he searched every room in the house. Every window remained locked from the inside. The front door was still bolted. He began sleeping with the lamp burning. The attacks continued. Some nights they lasted only moments. Other nights they seemed endless. He grew exhausted. His students noticed the dark circles beneath his eyes. He started forgetting lessons. Even simple conversations became difficult. Eventually, he admitted what had been happening. A village monk listened without interrupting. When Niran finished, the monk nodded thoughtfully. "There are things we explain with medicine," he said. "And there are things people explain with stories. Sometimes both explanations help different people sleep." Before leaving, the monk handed him a small packet wrapped in cloth. Inside was an old tube of bright red lipstick. Niran looked at it, confused. The monk smiled. "My grandmother insisted every young man keep one nearby." Niran couldn't help laughing. The idea seemed ridiculous. Still, that night, before blowing out the lamp, he uncapped the lipstick and drew an awkward line across his lips. It was mostly a joke. Mostly. He slept until sunrise. The attacks never returned. Months later, after completing his teaching assignment, Niran packed his belongings and left the village. The lipstick remained forgotten inside a bedside drawer. Now, according to the law, the Fiam is a malevolent Thai spirit that causes sleep paralysis and uniquely targets only men. To survive the night, men apply red lipstick before sleeping to trick the ghost into thinking they are female, because the spirit does not harm women. She bypasses the disguised men and leaves them unharmed. The house stood empty until another teacher arrived the following year. When the landlord showed him the room, he apologized for its age. The young man smiled. "I've slept in worse places." As they unpacked the bag together, the landlord opened the drawer beside the bed. Inside was an old tube of bright red lipstick. He stared at it for a moment before quietly closing the drawer again. He decided not to mention it. He believed that some stories, in time, will reveal themselves. A young girl was born to a Korean family who believed she had special powers. It all happened one day when she was running around the house playing with her two brothers and one sister. A valuable old china suddenly crashed and broke into the kitchen. When the family gathered and asked the children who did this, they all accused each other. But the girl's mother turned to her and asked, "Maya, who did this?" And she pointed to a younger brother who vehemently denied the allegation. After that, she had a special treatment from the family and elders. They all believed that she was born with special powers, that she could see visions and interpret the truth of the world that others weren't able to. She couldn't make predictions, But it was as if she could picture herself exactly what happened in that situation and narrate things as is. The rest of the siblings avoided her as they believed she would tell on them for any small mischief they got up to. And that's exactly what she did. They all lived in a very old home that stood for over 150 years. It was a decaying property by the time she grew into a young woman. By this time, she was called the local Mudang. A Mudang is a Korean shamanic priestess, one who mediates between the living and the spirit world using ritual and divination to heal. They also reveal hidden truths and calm restless spirits. She would make house calls for those who wanted answers. If a woman felt that her husband was deceiving her and sleeping with a neighbor, if a businessman was suspicious of his partners, or if a robbery occurred in the town, she was the one called. One night, there was a commotion in the town, and the people gathered around to see that a murder had taken place. A man stood in the middle of a group of people who were accusing him of having murdered his wife. No, no, I just came back from the village after a week, he claimed. Liar, you came back and saw that she was with another man. Another man shouted. You killed her because she didn't cook dinner for you? You bastard, a woman cried. The townspeople kept throwing accusations one after another. The town chief then told everyone to calm down and that there will be an investigation carried out before any accusations can be made against the widower. The head council and members gathered together in the big hall to discuss what should be done. We haven't found any evidence linking him to the crime. A night guard did see him wander into the village only a few hours ago. There really is no proof that he did this. The council discussed the matter between themselves and came to the conclusion that the man was a simple construction worker and often travels for work. So, with 3 kids at home, it didn't seem like a good idea for him to get rid of her. We need someone more powerful to help us close the rumors. Let us bring in the woman, said the mayor. Everyone in the council already knew what that meant. The Mudang was then called in. The council held a hearing in front of the crowd of people and informed them that there will be a trial held to determine his guilt, and that the Mudang would be the one to help prove it. The woman then appeared, and they watched as she entered the house of the accused man. She looked around the house and saw what seemed to be a shawl. It was bloody, and she picked it up. She felt an immediate jolt of electricity. She fell backwards, and the council helped her to her feet. They all stepped out of the house. The Mudang pointed at the accused man and simply said, "He did it." The man cried out and begged them not to listen to her. "Lies! She's lying! I did not hurt my wife." The next day, he was hung. The woman had thus been hailed as the town hero, and well, she felt pretty good about it. Over the years, she brought justice to rapists, murderers, and thieves, and she basked in the glory of the town's praise. Years passed, and she eventually became the head of her family home after everyone passed and she was the only one left. The woman remained single and celibate. She did not practice any sort of faith that was local to the area, nor did she have any customary beliefs. The deity she believed in was justice. She did pray and offered some small objects of gold and gems at the altar and lit candles. These ornaments were often given to her in exchange for her services when people were unable to provide money. Her services, after all, didn't come cheap. One night, she noticed that the gold she placed on the altar was missing. She immediately questioned the housekeeper and servants. They were extremely scared of her and would never dare to commit anything close to theft, let alone rob her of her jewels. The woman knew this as well, and that is why she dared to even keep her valuables in plain sight. She summoned them and held individual sessions with them to see if she could come up with the truth. But she couldn't find anything. In fact, in none of her sessions was she able to experience any kind of vision. She was stunned and wasn't sure if her powers suddenly disappeared. She asked the household to search through the house and try to find her treasure. The household searched the full property but couldn't find anything. One night, as she was lying in bed, she heard a loud thud outside her door and footsteps leading away. She got out of bed and followed the footsteps. They led to a small door that was always locked even when she was a child. This time, it was open. When she entered, she saw something that looked like a demon staring back at her and smiling. "Can I help you, miss?" She turned around to see the head of the housekeeper standing at the corridor. No, I'm fine. I just couldn't sleep." She turned back and saw nothing there. "Do you want some water, miss?" asked the housekeeper, looking concerned. "Do you know if this door was always open?" The housekeeper shook her head. "No, miss, I don't think I ever seen it open." The woman was disturbed, but she had an idea. The next morning, she informed the household to take the day off and leave her alone in the house for the night. They tried to question her, but she insisted. Once the household left, and it was just her, she waited until 10 p.m. And then she walked into the room and sat on a chair and waited. At least 2 hours passed by, and she dozed off. Suddenly, she woke up to a loud sound. It was a stranger in front of her with a shroud on the floor. On the shroud lay all her jewelry and offerings, perfectly arranged. "What are you doing with my things?" she asked in a stern voice. "I think you're mistaken. These belong to me," answered the demon. "But I never..." "Who do you think gave you your powers? When you were a little girl, you think you had those powers since your birth? No, I was always around you. When you accused your little brother of breaking the china, I whispered this into your ear. When you accused the groundsman of stealing the crops, I'm the one who told you to do it. Now look how far you've come. You're the town hero. And just who do you think you've been making these offerings to?" The demon laughs. The woman is now completely shattered. She believed a lie. She was brought up believing this lie. No, this can't be." That poor man. He just walked into his house and saw his wife bludgeoned. I'm sure he never thought he would be accused of her murder. But we did that together. But why? You ask why as though there must be a reason. Watching your brother punished, I knew you enjoyed it. You enjoyed watching that man hang. We are the same, you and I. The woman collapsed and started sobbing. All the people she had accused of over the years was a complete lie. The families she deceived. That overwhelming feeling came rushing all at once. You did good. Our work here is now done. And then, just like that, he disappears. The woman completely isolated herself and stayed locked in the house till her final days. Her powers never returned, and she didn't bother to explore them ever again. Indonesia is one of the most culturally diverse countries in the world, shaped by thousands of islands, hundreds of ethnic groups, and dozens of local languages. Because of that diversity, it carries a vast range of eerie tales, ghost stories, and folklore from across the archipelago. One of them concerns a creature known as the Jenglot. People describe it as no longer than the palm of a hand. Its skin is dry and tightly drawn against tiny bones. Its fingernails grow impossibly long. Its hair never seemed to stop growing. Some insist it is nothing more than an elaborate hoax. Others refuse to mention it after sunset, not because they fear the creature itself, but because every jenglot is said to belong to someone. And if it ever belongs to you, it may never truly leave. The rainy season had turned the roads into long ribbons of mud by the time William Vandermeer arrived in the mountain town. He had spent nearly 15 years traveling across the Dutch East Indies collecting heirlooms for museums in Europe. Bronze statues, old manuscripts, ceremonial masks, objects other collectors dismissed as ordinary. He believed that history deserved preservation. The villagers believed history sometimes preferred to be left alone. On his final afternoon in the town, Willem noticed a small wooden box resting beneath an elderly mystic's table. Unlike the polished carvings surrounding it, the box was wrapped in faded cloth and tied with coarse twine. It looked forgotten. Naturally, that is what drew his interest. What is inside? The old man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he untied the cloth just enough for Willem to glimpse something no larger than his hand. It resembled a tiny human body. The skin had the color of old parchment. Its mouth hung slightly open. Two thin fangs rested against shriveled lips. Long black hair spilled around its shoulder. Its fingernails curved like tiny hooks. It looked ancient. What is it? Willem asked. The old man quietly closed the box. It isn't for sale. Collectors hear those words differently from everyone else. To Willem, they simply meant the negotiation had begun. He offered double. The old man refused. He offered 5 times the asking price for everything else on the table. Still no. Finally, the old man looked at him. It already has a keeper. I don't believe in curses, said Willem. The old man smiled faintly. I believe you. By sunset, the box sat inside Willem's carriage. The old man never chased after him. He simply watched him disappear into the rain. Back in Batavia, the tiny figure occupied the center shelf of a locked glass cabinet in Willem's study. He catalogued it carefully. Unknown ceremonial object. Origin: Central Java. Material: undetermined. Height: 5 inches. He examined every detail beneath a magnifying glass. The hair appeared real. The nails felt like keratin. The teeth resembled those of a mammal. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths. He admired the craftsmanship. 3 mornings later, his housekeeper refused to dust the cabinet. She stood silently at the study door. "I don't touch things like that." Willem laughed. "It's a doll." She looked at him with genuine confusion. "No, Tuan, it isn't." That evening, he measured the hair, mostly to amuse himself. Exactly 11 centimeters. He noted it in his journal. The following week, he measured it again, 12. He frowned. Perhaps he had written the first number incorrectly. He measured the nails too, slightly longer. Impossible. He blamed the humidity. One morning, he noticed something else: a shallow porcelain dish inside the cabinet, empty. He had never placed one there. He asked every member of his staff. No one admitted to it. One of them resigned before sunset. Another refused to enter the study ever again. Life continued, or tried to. The horses grew restless. His favorite hunting dog refused to climb the staircase leading toward the cabinet. Fresh meat spoiled unusually quickly. Some mornings the study carried the faint metallic smell of blood. By afternoon, it always disappeared. Eventually, curiosity overcame reason. Late one evening, Willem unlocked the cabinet. He placed the figure upon his desk. Nothing happened. He smiled at himself. Then, using the point of a sewing needle, he pricked his finger. One small drop of blood formed. He let it fall on the porcelain dish. "Let's see if your stories are true." He locked the cabinet, blew out the lamp, and went to bed. The next morning, the dish was clean. There was no trace of dry blood. Just a clean plate. The drop had vanished. He inspected the cabinet. The jenglot remained exactly where he had left it. Its mouth was still open. Its eyes remained tightly shut. Nothing had moved. He told himself that wasn't possible, until he noticed its hair now rested across both shoulders. Weeks became months. He stopped inviting guests into the study, not because he feared ridicule, because he feared they might notice something he had begun pretending not to see. Every few days, the dish appeared, empty, waiting. He never remembered placing it inside, yet it was always there. One rainy afternoon, an old letter arrived. There was no return address. Inside lay a single sentence written in careful Javanese script. "It is no longer hungry because you have already fed it." Willem ordered the cabinet burned. The servants refused. so he carried it himself outside and lit a match. The teakwood caught fire almost immediately. The glass shattered. The cabinet collapsed into glowing embers. When the flames finally died, only one object remained untouched: the tiny figure. Its hair drifted gently in the evening breeze. Its eyes remained closed. The following morning, it was back inside his study, resting upon the same shelf, the porcelain dish beside it, empty, waiting. William never traveled again. The man who had crossed islands in search of forgotten history rarely stepped beyond the walls of his own home after that. His friends thought he had fallen on bad times. His servants blamed age. Those who lived with him simply stopped trying to understand. The study became a room everyone passed quickly, speaking a little softer as they walked by. When William died, several years later, the house stood quiet for the first time in months. It took the servants almost a week before they found the courage to unlock the study. The cabinet was exactly where William had left it. Inside, the tiny figure rested on the same shelf. Its long hair spilled over its shoulders. Its eyes remained closed. It looked no different from the day it had arrived from the mountains of central Java. The porcelain dish beside it, however, was no longer empty. Someone had been feeding it. None of the servants admitted to entering the room, yet each of them privately believed one of the others had continued William's routine after his death. The suspicion lingered long enough to divide people who had worked together for years. Arguments became common. One servant resigned after insisting he heard someone moving about the study every night. Another refused to sleep inside the house, convinced that William's voice still drifted beneath the door after sunset. Before long, nobody wanted the cabinet to remain there. An elderly villager from the nearby kampung listened quietly as the servants described everything that had happened since William had brought the figure into his home. And when they finished, he mentioned only one thing: some things are not meant to be owned, only returned. The following morning, they carried the cabinet back toward the foothills where William had first acquired it. Beyond the last farms stood an old banyan tree whose roots had long since swallowed the remains of an abandoned shrine, and that was where they buried it. Not deeply, just enough for the earth to take it back. Life slowly returned to the house after that. The quarrels ended. The sleepless nights became less frequent. One by one, the servants left to begin new lives elsewhere. As the years passed, the story faded with them. The house changed owners. The old road disappeared beneath new ones. Children grew into adults who had never heard William's name. Only the banyan tree remained. Its roots continued to spread quietly through the hillside, holding fast to whatever rests beneath it. In Java, stories about the Jenglot have never depended on proof. Some people believe they are nothing more than carefully crafted objects. Others refuse to let them cross the threshold of their homes. Perhaps that is why they are rarely spoken of today. Not because the stories disappeared, but because every so often someone remembers where one was buried. If tonight's story stayed with you, I'd love for you to subscribe. All the tales are original, and many of you have grown up hearing versions of them. Every week, I bring you new horror stories inspired by the folklore, myths, and legends of Asia. Have you ever experienced sleep paralysis? I want to hear your stories in the comments. And if you have a favorite tale from your own country or culture, drop it below or email me at asian.myth.horror@gmail.com. I'm always hunting for new stories to feature. Until next time, if the dark feels a little closer tonight, tuck yourself in tighter and keep your lantern lit.